Jess had never felt this kind of excitement before. Her own apartment, her first real step into independence, and at a price that felt like a miracle. Sure, the place was small, and the peeling wallpaper gave it an eerie vibe, but it was hers. As she unpacked, her fingers brushed against the strange, handleless door at the end of the hallway. It stood there, silent and unassuming, almost blending into the wall. She frowned, her fingers trailing over the smooth surface. "What's this room?" she asked the landlord casually as he handed her the keys. The man froze, his cheery demeanor slipping for just a moment before he forced a tight smile. "There's no room there," he said quickly, his voice clipped. "Old buildings, you know? Walls settle in strange ways." Jess blinked, confused, but the landlord hurried out before she could press further. That night, the silence in the apartment felt oppressive. Jess lay awake, her eyes on the ceiling, trying to convince herself the newness of the space was just playing tricks on her. But then she heard it. A faint scratching sound. Her stomach twisted. "Probably just rats," she muttered under her breath, clutching the blanket tighter. But the next night, the scratching grew louder. And by the third night, it wasn't scratching anymore. It was whispers. Soft, insidious murmurs slipped through the thin crack where the door met the frame, just barely audible. Words she couldn't understand, but their tone made her chest tighten with unease. "Okay," Jess muttered to herself, pacing the apartment the next day. "It's just an old building. Old buildings make noises, right?" She laughed nervously, but her unease wouldn't leave. She told her neighbors about the door, the sweet old lady who lived across the hall. The woman's face fell, her hand trembling on the doorknob. "There's no door there," she said, her voice a trembling whisper before slamming her door shut. Jess was determined now. This was her apartment. She wasn't about to let a creepy door and some weird noises make her feel like a stranger in her own home. That night, armed with a crowbar, she pried the door open. The resistance was strange, like the door didn't want to move, but with one final heave, it gave way. What she saw stole the breath from her lungs. The room beyond was massive, impossibly large. Far too big to fit within the walls of her tiny apartment. Shelves lined every wall, filled with objects that defied explanation. Mirrors that reflected nothing, books with covers that writhed under her gaze, and jars filled with thick, black liquid that pulsed like a heartbeat. In the middle of the room, a chair sat under a single, flickering bulb, and sitting in the chair was her. Jess froze, her mind screaming in denial. The figure stood slowly, jerking in strange, unnatural movements. Its face was hers, but the eyes, oh God, the eyes. They were empty voids, dark and endless. "You shouldn't have opened the door," it whispered, the voice layered and wrong, like a chorus of her own voice speaking at once. Jess stumbled back, fear choking her as the doppelgänger stepped forward, crossing the threshold into her hallway. The door behind her slammed shut with a deafening bang. "No!" she screamed, reaching for the handle, but there was no handle. No way out. The last thing Jess saw before the dark swallowed her was her own face, twisted into a cruel smile. The doppelgänger reached for the crowbar and whispered in her own chilling voice, "You're home now." When morning came, the new Jess emerged from the apartment. She smiled at the neighbor in the hallway, waved to the landlord on her way out. Everything seemed normal, except for the way her gaze lingered on each person just a little too long. And the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Thrill Up Shorts, your home for bite-sized horrors and unforgettable chills. Who knows? Maybe the next story will be about your door.